Rugby Championship, folks, this weekend, the Saturday game, which is Sunday here in NZ, is the Pumas taking on the Springboks. We're going to go through some lineups, some stats, predictions, and you guys can let us know your thoughts on how this game is going to go. It is a pretty important game in terms of where the standings are at. Remember, this is the second game of the fifth round, with the Wallabies and All Blacks having already played. That result may come up later in the video, so if you do not know that result and don't wish to be spoiled, fair warning, it's fair game, seeing as it was yesterday, and this game is not until the weekend. So I'm sitting here recording this on a Friday. But yeah, both these sides 2-2. No one's been able to get any real kind of consistency yet in this competition. Pumas had a good away win in New Zealand for their first time ever. South Africa broke a really long losing drought in Australia. So there's still lots to play for these sides, and yeah, based on the way the standings are at, it'd be a good idea to win with a bonus point if possible. If you guys are in the States and you want to watch this game or the URC, which is starting this weekend as well, check out Flow Rugby, link in the description. They got heaps of rugby on. URC, Top 14, Rugby Championship, so even NPC if you're into the Kiwi game. But yeah, check out Flow Rugby. They got loads on. It's happy days. The Argentinians have made a few changes. Remember, they didn't send their entire squad to New Zealand for that tour, so some of the guys who didn't tour are back. Tetaz Chaparro is in the front row alongside Montoya and Bello. So that's kind of a bit of a mixture. Bello's up from the bench. Montoya continues on. He's the captain, so that's kind of to be expected. And then Tetaz Chaparro, who didn't travel, he's the veteran guy, and was replaced by some of the more youthful members of the squad. He's back, so it's good to see him. They did ask Michael Checker about it in the press conference, and he basically just said, yeah, some of the guys need a bit of a break, some time with their family and whatnot, so that's where Tetaz Chaparro was at. Alemanno is also back alongside Lavanini in the second row. Alemanno is like the top line-out guy for the Pumas, so expect to see him kind of continuing to operate in the air. And I mean, just the Pumas forward pack generally, like Matera, Kremer, and Juan Gonzalez. That's your kind of 8, 7, 6. I mean, these guys just tackle the absolute house down, don't they? Like, the top tackler in the competition is Kremer. The second guy is Montoya. The third guy is Lavanini. So these guys are just getting through bucket loads of work, whether they're back row, second row, front row. The forward pack has just been tackling the house down. And Gonzalez is like a proper athletic Lucy as well. I've been really pleased to see him getting some time with ball in hand. They chuck him up at the line-out time as well. So, yeah, he's up starting. So, yeah, good to see. Good to see a bit of rotation and not just the same old guys getting minutes. Speaking of that, Bertranou's up from the bench, so he starts at 9. Him and Kubeli swap places. Carreras, he is there in the 10 jersey. He's been a bit of a stalwart since Sanchez has had an injury, and Carreras' kicking game has been, has been coming along pretty nicely. And with that natural running game he's got, I do think he is a bit of a threat. Udupajeta is your kind of replacement veteran guy on the bench, and he did come on pretty early in that game where they got a hiding against the All Blacks, and for an initial period was able to add a bit of spark to the attack, but the second half ended up kind of getting away from them. But initially he was able to have some good impact, so we'll look for that if Udupajeta comes on. Whatever time he comes on, basically. De La Fuente and Orlando are the midfield. So De La Fuente is another guy who didn't travel. Remember, he had a hamstring injury, scored that famous try where he pulled his hammy on the way to the try line. So he's back in the familiar 12 jersey. And then Boffelli, Cinti, and Mallia are the outside backs. So Cinti's not really been able to make that much of an impact thus far, so we will expect to see a little bit from him. Boffelli's obviously been doing the work with the boot. And Mallia, I think of the back three for Argentina, has probably been the most dangerous, like proper ball in hand guy. So yeah, the South African guys will need to look out, and also just look out generally, because the Argentinians have managed to score a few tries this Rugby Championship, which initiated with them putting boot to ball. So yeah, you need to be careful. Kremer is there as the replacement hooker. Remember, I think he played Premiership last week, so he's not going to have any rust, even if he didn't take the tour to New Zealand. Gajo and Sclavi are down to the bench alongside Petty. Bruni is back into the 23's replacement Lucy, and Moroni is the other back replacement. So it's kind of, I guess, a healthy state of picking players for the Argentinians. It's not wholesale changes. It's some guys swapping bench for starting roles. A couple of guys come into the 23s, a couple of guys go out. So it's not wholesale changes. It's just keeping the, I don't want to call it just rotation, because he's not like changing the whole squad, but he's just giving guys minutes in different positions. Obviously, some guys have been really consistent, like Carreras has been very consistent, but yeah, and Montoya. But yeah, I think overall we can see what Cheika is up to. I should say that Gajo, everyone's favourite loose head prop, has got the most defenders beaten of any of the Argentinian players this Rugby Championship. I don't know if that's concerning for Argentina that your best guy for defenders beaten is a prop, or if that's just great that you've got a real good ball-carrying prop on your hands who's a bit of an excitement machine. But anyway, Boffelli is their main guy for clean breaks as well, even though it's me talking up Mallia. Boffelli is another threat as well. For the Springboks, they've named a pretty much stable starting 15, but they have done a little bit of tinkering on the bench. Kitsoff, Marks and Malherbe is that same pretty ominous looking front row, and then Etzebeth and Diaka continue there. Lock and Duo have been a pretty good pairing, man. I mean, Etzebeth, interestingly, has been pinching a few line-out balls alongside Diaka, although Diaka's the main guy for winning their own line-out ball. And then Kolisi, Mostert and Visa in the back row. Kolisi has just been absolutely tackling the house down. I think Marks is like the top guy for winning turnovers in the competition, and Kolisi is second. And Kolisi is South Africa's top tackler, so he was playing like a man possessed in their win over the Aussies. So yeah, happy days for that Springboks forward pack. I mean, even Franco Mostert got a try in that last game, which kind of speaks to how much kind of physical dominance these guys were getting up front. Hendrickse and Willemse are the 19 combo. The only thing about Willemse is the goal kicking didn't look that flash. I mean, I think the first two games the Springboks were at 100% for the goal kicking with Pollard, and then he had a bit of an off night when they kicked it like 60, and then the last game was 50. So the goal kicking's taken a bit of a fall off a cliff. That's certainly a trainable skill that Willemse can kind of practice if they've got the kicking coach spending more time with him. But Willems is not the guy. I mean, I love his footwork. I think he's the Springboks top guy for like defenders beaten. I think he's second overall. I love watching him ball in hand, but like, if you want a guy who you can put the mortgage on to win you a game with the boot, it's not necessarily that guy. He can kick some of the clutch ones, and then sometimes I swear he'll miss ones that not that much pressure, kind of relatively straightforward kick. He'll miss it. But yeah, apart from that aspect of his game, he's coming along really nicely. Deerlinde and Creel, 12 and 13. I mean, Creel's got massive shoes to fill, doesn't he? With Lucanio absent. I mean, as good as the Springboks were in that last win over Australia, I don't think Creel really imposed himself that much. Like, there wasn't any question mark after that game as to whether maybe Creel's competing with for a starting spot. Like, if is fit, he's night and day. The top guy in the 13 jersey for South Africa, isn't he? So, I mean, I still miss seeing Creel in 15, to be honest, but there you go, that's just me. We'll see how he goes with another chance to get a crack at it. Moody, with that fantastic debut, is still there on the right wing. Mipimpi and LaRue make out the back three. I mean, LaRue's the top guy for try assists in the Rugby Championship after the first 4 rounds, so he's doing pretty well. 3 try assists from him. Mipimpi has got a stack of run meters and clean breaks. Obviously, you're missing like I mentioned, because he's leading still heaps of stat categories, but he's not going to be back for the Rugby Championship. But yeah, it's the bench where we see the changes. You got Esterhuizen coming in, which is a bit of good news, because he's a guy who I think needs a bit of game time. It's going to be an interesting one to see how he kind of partners up with Willemse, because when Esterhuizen is playing alongside Marcus Smith in the Premiership, he looks the absolute business, but I think he needs that guy alongside him to put him into those gaps. Faf de Klerk comes in as your scrum half replacement. Front Stain has been said to be covering fly half if anything happens to Willemse, so that will be an interesting one if that happens, because we've not usually seen him slot into 10 when he has been called upon. Elric Lowe is also into the squad, which is a bit of pleasing news for that young man. He's been a wee while between drinks, so good for that guy to get some more experience under his belt. Furi and Chi and Inyakane are the front row replacements, so Dion gets another chance to have some time at hooker, although probably minimal minutes to the end. And Quacka Smith is there as well. The likes of Vermeulen, Reinach and Galant are out of the 23 for this one. So yeah, stable starting 15 with a little bit of tinkering on the bench. Team-wise, if you're looking at the stats between these two teams, there's some obvious kind of easy fixes and some kind of concerning areas, I guess, for both teams. Like, just work-ons, basically. Every team's got them. I mean, for Argentina, Interestingly, their line-out is still the best in the competition, which is not what you would have predicted at the start of the competition. You probably would have put the house on it being South Africa, but not to be. The Argentinians are like at 89%, whereas the Boks are at, I think, 80%, which for them is genuinely quite low. And for Argentina, when they have opted for the boot a wee bit more, they've tended to get good results from it. So whether they kick to the South Africans, try to get into a kicking duel, we saw a little bit of that where the Aussies were losing that battle. Kind of remains to be seen. But yeah, they also tend to ship a lot of points in the opening 20. I think the Argentinians are averaging 10 points conceded in the first 20 minutes. So yeah, not really the way you want to be playing it, but yeah, we'll see if they're able to up that. I mentioned the South African goal kicking has been a little bit off a cliff in recent times. They probably need to get the maul going. Well, they've been mauling a fair bit, but they've not been getting much pay over the try line, and maybe that comes down to the line out as well. You need to get that penalty. You need to kick it into opposition 22, and you need to get that maul going to get guys like Marks over the line. So there's been a little bit of a lack of that. But South African discipline has been really good. The only side averaging fewer than 10 penalties. Every other side is like, 10, 11, 12 penalties considered a game. South Africans were still at like 9 after 4 rounds. So discipline has been really good, and Jacques never talks about that being a key area for them. So it may be the same in this one. Recent history between the sides, the South Africans have got the last 4 in a row. We have to go back to 2018 to find a Argentinian win. That was in Mendoza. That was 32-19. But every game since then, the Argentinians have been kept to less than 20 points. But only one of the other games was played in Argentina. The most recent 3 have all been in South Africa. Remember, the 2 in Port Elizabeth last year with no crowds. So pretty comfortable wins for the Boks, 32-12, which is a familiar score, and 29-10. Average score is like 30 points to 17. So the South Africans are generally pretty good value over the Pumas in recent times. And the game's been moved. They had to move the ground because the normal ground where the Jaguares used to play has got bad pitch conditions apparently. So they're having to go to the Independiente ground, football ground. So that's going to be something a bit different. But hopefully the pitch doesn't cut up. It is on at 4:10 local time, so it's a kind of late afternoon game. I mentioned that's like 7:10 in the morning here in New Zealand. That'd be evening in South Africa, won't it? I'll have to double check. You guys can let me know if that's a horrendous time or a not too bad time. I feel like that's just before you guys are getting ready to go to bed, but that's just off the top of my head. James Dolman's the ref, so you get another Kiwi ref. But speaking of the Wallabies and All Blacks, I mean, the ref was a big talking point after that game. Fingers crossed we're not talking about old James after the end of this one. Predictions-wise, it's the Boks by 11 points with the Rugby Forecast algorithm, and it's the Boks by 7 points with the bookies. So, yeah, predict to get the job done. With the table being what it is, as I mentioned, bonus point would certainly keep things a little bit more interesting going into the final round. But anyway, there we go. Predictions done. Squads are done. Stats are done. You guys let me know your thoughts. Who do you reckon is going to get this one done? Can you see the Pumas getting the job done at home, or do you think the Springboks are going to be just too good? You guys let us know your thoughts, and yeah, I'll talk to you guys again soon. See you later.